Hi, everyone. Welcome to Unconfirmed, the podcast that reveals how the marquee names in crypto are reacting to the week's top headlines and gets the inside scoop on what they see on the horizon. I'm your host, Laura Shin. If you aren't receiving my weekly email newsletter, go to unchainedpodcast.com to sign up. And don't forget that Unchained and Unconfirmed are now on YouTube. You can go subscribe there to be alerted to all the latest episodes of both podcasts.
Crypto.com is the place you can buy crypto at true cost. Earn up to 8% per year on your BTC, ETH, XRP, and more. Install the Crypto.com app now. CipherTrace cutting-edge cryptocurrency intelligence powers anti-money laundering, blockchain analytics, and threat intel. Leading exchanges, virtual currency businesses, banks, and regulators themselves use CipherTrace to comply with regulation and to monitor compliance.
Today's guest is Ryan Zurrer, former Chief Commercial Officer and Director at the Web3 Foundation and former Principal and Partner at Polychain Capital, who recently proposed a new DAO that is also called the DAO. Welcome, Ryan.
Hey, Laura. Thanks very much for having me on. Super excited to be here and talking with you again.
Yeah, I'm also excited because I feel like there's this new trend, or it's sort of like an old trend that is being revived, which is DAOs. And you are proposing one that is basically a throwback to the infamous DAO. So what is this DAO that you are creating?
Yeah, so it takes some of the tenets from the original DAO, principally that this is a pool of capital, both financial and human capital, that's designed to generate value, and so we're excited about that mission. But then it also has a number of new architecture components to it that we're really excited. I think the space has moved a long way since the original DAO in 2016, and now we have sort of the sets of tools and technologies and lessons learned from previous mistakes made that we can compose kind of a more thoughtful, elegant DAO structure that allows people to come in and participate and generate value and hopefully participate in some of that value.
And so what are some of these differences or improvements on the original DAO? So
one really interesting sort of keystone to DAOs that I'm very excited about is the opportunity to have reputation-weighted peer review. So what we need is a mechanism where people can come in and perform work and propose deals and make things happen, and they can have confidence that if they propose great things and values created, that they can share in that and that upside. And that allows, really talented people, the confidence that if they bring their talents here, they can, can capture significant value if they generate great value. And so, I'm really excited about a new set of technologies coming out of Protocol Labs, a project called, SourceCred, that mixes, some objective components that uses, Google PageRank on things like GitHub commits and Discord posts, but then also mixes that with some subjective components, which is reputation-weighted peer review. So, for example, like in the context of Protocol Labs, where the founder, Juan Benet, is sort of like the spiritual and technical leader of that team, he has a lot more weight when he gives out cred to his team than, say, somebody who's only been there for a few weeks. So having this very thoughtful approach of mixing objective measures, like what you've done on GitHub, with how you've interacted with your team and what kind of things your team thinks that has generated the most amount of value for that team, is a good way to remunerate participants in a decentralized organization. And that's really a big step forward for us, something that we didn't know, and we didn't know how to solve at the time of the last DAO. We didn't know how people would essentially be paid for their participation in that DAO.
I like the idea of a more objective measure, but the one thing is that some of the components of what you just described are objective. And then there's one that to me appears to be subjective, which is the one where it's like, Juan Benet can rate one of the coders on his team or something, because I could see that getting political. And then it's sort of like what we saw in the financial crisis, where the ratings agencies were being paid by the banks, and then therefore they kept giving good grades. Do you know what I'm saying? Like the other things, like the GitHub commits and stuff, that definitely seems objective to me. But how, do you have a way to kind of prevent that other one from becoming you pat my back, I'll pat yours type situation?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think the goal here with this DAO generally, as well as SourceCred generally, is to try to grandfather in sort of decentralization and a objective approach over time. That you start out being probably more highly subjective, because on the flip side, things like GitHub commits and Discord posts and things like that could be gamed. And now there's a really elegant approach to this using Google PageRank so that it limits gaming, but you still can, effectively game the system in some instance. So at the start of the project, you want to have some level of checks and balances within like the human part of the organization, and then slowly migrate to be more and more objective over time. So that, say, as politics would naturally increase in an organization over time, in fact, you're taking the edge off of that political sort of beast, so to speak, and making things more objective over time, thereby limiting the politics in the organization, and hopefully then actually leading to an organization that has, say, less politics in it than you would otherwise see in an organization that just scales.
Okay. Yeah. And oh yeah, man, gaming these algorithms, that's definitely another really big issue. Well, so another thing I was curious about is so why did you decide to revive the DAO? I mean, that is easily one of the most notorious projects ever in the history of crypto. So what motivated you to, I guess, try to redeem the name?
So, incidentally, this started right from the death of the previous DAO. I mean, I was really excited about that DAO. Had then in the blow up sponsored the White Hat Group and got to know some of the great team that led that White Hat Group, like Jordi Bellina and Alex Van de Sande and those guys. And then and really at the start of the DAO, I wanted to, do what I do, find good deals and propose that to the DAO and participate in the DAO as an investor, but also work for the DAO. And I thought this was kind of the coolest, most sci-fi thing I could be doing in the space. And it really excited me. So then when it blew up, I was like, okay, well, I got to go and find something else to do here. And that's what led me to find Olaf and seed Polychain, and then step into Polychain in an operational capacity in the weeks following its inception. But I've always really wanted to have the DAO back. And today I make the observation that if the DAO had survived, today would be the largest capital pool in the space. And the quality of the due diligence that we were seeing in those early days of the DAO was far better than anything we saw in the ICO craze of, circa 2017. And so if the DAO had survived, it probably would have actually tempered that hysteria that we saw in 2017, because the bar to get over and have the review and the due diligence done by the DAO community would have been really high. And a lot of teams that went on to raise subsequent money in ICOs probably would not have had that really important signal from the DAO and the community-led due diligence that I was very, very impressed with. And so really, it's just been a strong internal desire ever since to live kind of the true crypto anarchist ideals of working for this kind of sci-fi futuristic organization. And then also a recognition that it was doing really good work at that time. And so I would like to see the experiment be played out in its entirety and see if we can't, crowdsource deal flow. And if we can't get great decisions and strategy using the wisdom of the crowd, I think it could be really compelling. And then I've spent a lot of time in China over the last year and have found that really for me, Web3 is happening in China more than anywhere else on the planet. And I've been really inspired by a lot of the work from that developer community and the fact that they're, really using this stuff. And I would love for a mechanism that allows a kid in Beijing who may not have a, government ID, but maybe a really badass coder, be able to contribute some of the capital that she has, but then also contribute some of the intellect that she has and be able to work for this thing and understand that if she works hard and she does contribute significant value to this organization, that she can be remunerated and be recognized and be proud of the work that she does. And so I think the tools have come together now, and we've had enough experiments with DAOs that we can revisit this grand experiment once more.
All right, we're going to discuss how this DAO will work as well as the legality of it. But first, a quick word from the sponsors who make this show possible.
Will the world follow France and advocate banning privacy coins? Will government-backed stablecoins become the new fiat? Are distributed and peer-to-peer exchanges just a flash in the pan? The answer is maybe. Virtual currencies can flourish and create a new, private, and more versatile economy. But that grand vision can't happen without keeping crypto clean. And that requires support of governments and accountability for bad actors. Privacy-enhanced compliance using cryptographic controls has the potential to preserve anonymity without compromising legitimate investigations. CipherTrace is working on this vision of the future. Sign up to stay up to date on the Privacy-Enhanced Compliance Initiative and receive authoritative crypto AML reports quarterly. www.ciphertrace.com/keepcryptoclean. Crypto.com is the place you can buy crypto at true cost. You can buy over 40 coins at the lowest possible prices with no fees and no markups. At Crypto.com, we grow your crypto for you too. You can earn up to 8% per year on BTC, ETH, XRP, and more when you deposit in any of the 1-month, 3-month, or flexible terms. Download the Crypto.com app on iOS or Android now.
Back to my conversation with Ryan Zurrer. So why don't you briefly describe kind of what the structure is for this DAO and how it's going to work?
Sure. So I would recommend anybody who's interested to go and take a look at the white paper on the GitHub, /the-DAO. And we're super open to feedback from anyone. But essentially, at the top level, you have a clean capital pool that anybody can onboard or offboard onboard into or offboard from. And then the work of managing a professional fund is all pushed down to what we call leagues. And these leagues are DAOs in and of themselves that are service organizations, and they perform services for the DAO, and they're paid by the DAO via an inflation mechanism. So the DAO only pays out, it doesn't pay the underlying capital that it receives. So it'll receive, say, some Ether and wrapped Bitcoin and maybe MKR and certainly a lot of DAI and things like that, and will hold a capital pool. And then that capital pool, you've got a proxy token, which is the DAO, and then the DAO token inflates in order to make payments for services and also payments for investments. So the services necessary to run a professional fund, like compliance and ops and venture deal flow and treasury management and dev due diligence, those are pushed down to the leagues, and those leagues perform these services for a fee from the DAO. And then via multi-sig, certain leagues come together in order to agree to inflate DAO tokens in a given mandate to make investments. And a mandate is during a period of time, a set of leagues will perform a series of activities that is governed by some permissions and intended to create a specific output. So, for example, a mandate could be the leagues will deploy 10% of the capital into privileged opportunities over the course of 1 year, and no single opportunity can have more than 1% of the DAO deployed into it, and you can put on whatever other permissions that you want. And so then these people go out, find and evaluate deals, and then when those deals are to happen, inflate DAO tokens, issue those to the projects. The projects then have a token which has an underlying collateral to it, somewhat similar to DAI or maybe like BNB or something like that. And at any point, the project or an investor can redeem the underlying collateral. So that's a basket of ETH and wrapped BTC and DAI and other things like that. But if they want, they can just hold that DAO token or use that for a payment, and it's generally long the space, however, not as volatile as any of those single underlying assets. So we call this stabler coins, right? It's sort of a basket coin that you can spin up on Melonport and be, again, long crypto by holding it, but not irresponsible in being exposed to only one asset like Bitcoin or ETH or whatever single asset you would take capital into. So at a high level, that's kind of the overarching architecture, but then we can kind of dive deeper into some of the principles inherent in this DAO.
Well, one of the leagues that I want to ask you about is this compliance league, because they, at least from what I could glean from the white paper, they're sort of like the DAO curators, which for people who weren't around for the first DAO were a group of people who were kind of like big names in Ethereum, basically, who would essentially kind of vet proposals before they went before the DAO, just to make sure that the people, that what they were proposing actually matched their code, and that they were the people that they were saying that they were, and just kind of almost like a verification.
Yep.
But so for your compliance league, isn't that kind of like a point of centralization? And I definitely know that in the SEC's DAO report that the curators were, one of the key reasons that they expressed that DAO tokens were securities, since the profits from the DAO could be said to depend on the actions of these curators. So how is your compliance league different? Or is it not? Are you going to make your DAO tokens security tokens, or how will that part work?
No, so certainly the token is not a security, and we can kind of dive deeper into that. But to the compliance league. So the compliance league itself, from the first mandate and beyond, would be its own DAO. The big question is, how do you do the first whitelisting of the different options of mandates so that you're not Sybil attacked and DAO token holders don't have to decide between 100 different proposals of mandates, and then each person has to evaluate those for themselves. We want kind of a whitelist so that DAO token holders only, if they want to, only have to interact with the DAO, say once per mandate. Let's assume that a mandate's like a year in time. We don't want over participation by DAO token holders. So how do we get to a whitelisted group of, say, a multiple choice question A, B, C, D, and E being 4 sets of different proposals, and then E being none of them redo the mandate proposal period. And for that, as of right now, we propose using Aragon Court as an initial whitelisting mechanism. Aragon Court is a decentralized dispute resolution process that can be used for some esoteric decisions such as this. And we're working with Aragon to have an appeal mechanism that would go to the DAO token holders so that you're not, say, subject to AMT holders. Now, we've seen Aragon and the Aragon token holders make very coherent, dare I say, intelligent decisions as a group thus far. So we can use that as a whitelisting mechanism to start. And then from there, once you've decided on a compliance league, which should hopefully be, a collection of lawyers adequately, geographically dispersed and so on and so forth, they act in that compliance manner as a check and balance for all the deployments. But they don't act alone, right? So let's say you're making an investment into a project. That investment requires a multi-sig to be signed off between the Treasury, who makes sure that it checks that the investment is in line with the permission. So in our example, say not above 1% of total assets under management and so on and so forth. It has to be proposed by the venture league, who's found the deal and basically negotiated the deal. It would need to have a check from the developer league so that technical due diligence has been done. And then it needs to have a check from the compliance league, which again is a DAO, hopefully made up by lawyers around the world who will check that, we're not doing anything inherently wrong here, and say like funding a dark DAO or something that shouldn't be funded. And these being DAOs in and of themselves, I would argue, is not necessarily a point of centralization, or it's decentralized enough that it's not, say, just a committee in a room, the way that the original whitelisting process was set up for the original DAO. We thought a little bit further on that and created a series of checks and balances between these different entities. And one other thing that's important here is, so let's say the compliance league, turns malicious, or any one of the leagues turns malicious. There's a mechanism that we call a Benny switch. And this is named after Benedict Arnold, the famous American trader, that quickly allows DAO token holders to stake and make a proposal for a new mandate vote and switch out a malicious league. So if you've accidentally voted in a mandate where a league is acting maliciously, or maybe even just incompetent, not acting maliciously, but just not in line with the ideals of the DAO, you can quickly switch them out via a staking mechanism, which, again, these more advanced crypto economic models lead us to the conclusion that, it's very, very difficult to classify this as equity. And I would argue that the attempt to say classify something this complex as a security isn't just trying to fit a round peg into a square hole. It's really trying to fit an octahedron peg into a square hole, right? That's an Ethereum joke, I guess.
Right. But it makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, this is quite a different animal from a traditional security. So how much do you aim to raise, and when do you think this will be deployed?
So we would like to get this out somewhere around the end of the year. However, I've been fortunate and very grateful to accompany many project launches in this space. And I understand very acutely that the security audit process it can often delay projects. And this will be one of the most robust security audit processes that our space has ever seen.
It better be.
It will be. It will be. No amount of resources will be spared in ensuring that.
Could you imagine if this blew up?
Oh my goodness!
I'm amazed that you're laughing at that. Of course, I'm laughing, but all right. And then actually, we're over time, but just one last question: why are you calling it the DAO, just like the old DAO?
So it's really, to be honest, a placeholder until a until the community comes up with a name that they resonate with.
Wait, but Ryan, don't you know that the old name was also a placeholder?
Yeah, but it just fits so well, right? It's just like we had dozens of different names up until now, and they're kind of floating around in early versions. Like originally, actually, it was called VC DAO, not like venture capital DAO, but value creation DAO. But then it just, we just decided to embrace what it is. And, I went and spent some time with Christian Jentz, who was kind of the spiritual and technical leader of the original DAO, and asked him for his feedback and blessing on the use of that name. And we had a good joke on how, it was just a placeholder then, and it's kind of a placeholder now. And hopefully if we can get to a point where the community scales, I'm optimistic that, if the wisdom of the crowd leads to good investments, the wisdom of the crowd will also lead to good nomenclature. And so we'll find a name over time. And if not, I'm perfectly happy with the name the way that it is.
All right. Well, we'll see if that ends up being a curse or a blessing that you're matching the DAO already on those points. All right. Well, it's been great having you.
Well, thanks so much again.
It's been fun. I mean, when I was reading this, I was like, this is definitely very interesting. It's definitely very new, very different in certain ways from the previous DAO. So
yeah, it's just one of these things that at this point in my career in the space, I just want to work on something that feels really inspiring and sci-fi, that I can like go around and share the ideals of this type of community with people all around the world. And I've been... Yeah.
One thing is actually reading it, I was like, oh, this really draws on Ryan's experience.
Yeah, certainly my fingerprints are in different points, and it's very much designed to really disrupt the kind of the mental models and kind of startup economics of Silicon Valley, which I don't understand why they continue to permeate that way. And hopefully we can create a community that's centered around delivering great value. And I'm excited to watch the experiment unfold.
Yeah, me too, for sure. All right. Well, thanks for coming on Unconfirmed.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us today. To learn more about the topics we discussed, be sure to check out the links in the show notes of your podcast player. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. Unconfirmed is produced by me, Laura Shin, with help from Fascia Recording, Anthony Yoon, Daniel Nuss, Rich Struffolino, and Josh Durham. Thanks for listening.